Hello everybody, my name is Rainer and this is Rainier Books. I'm a German booktuber living in Sweden, speaking English, talking English about books, written more or less in English. And it's time for another edition because we're in the beginning of September. Actually, we're almost a week in to September, and it's time to look back at the books that I picked up in August. Not books that I've read, but books that I sort of realized that I registered in August, that were published in August of 2021, that are interesting to me and maybe even interesting to you. So it's about time to get started. So I have a tiny little list of 6 books here that I want to mention. Books in August of 2021, and maybe there is a joker, maybe there's a 7th book. I'm deciding that when I'm ready with my list of 6. The first on my list of 6 is a collection of stories from the United States by a Cambodian, seen by the eyes of a Cambodian immigrant. This is Afterparties, stories by Anthony Veasna. So it's on every list of this month, and it also came on my radar pretty much earlier this year, on my sort of release radar. This is seemingly transitioning between the absurd and the tender-hearted, balancing acerbic humor with sharp emotional depth. Afterparties offers an expansive portrait of the lives of Cambodian Americans. As the children of refugees carve out radical new paths for themselves in California, they shoulder the inherited weight of the Khmer Rouge genocide and grapple with the complexities of race, sexuality, friendship, and family. High school badminton coach and failing grocery store owner tries to relive his glory days by beating a rising star teenage player. 2 drunken brothers attend a wedding after party and hatch a plan to expose their shady uncle's snubbing of the bride and groom. A queer love affair sparks between an older tech entrepreneur trying to launch a safe space app and a disillusioned young teacher obsessed with Moby Dick. And in the sweeping final story, a 9-year-old child learns that his mother survived a racist school shooter. With nuanced emotional precision, gritty humor, and compassionate insight into the intimacy of queer and immigrant communities, the stories in Afterparties deliver an explosive introduction into the work of Anthony Veasna. So, Afterparties. Number 2, that is called The Love Songs of W.E.B. Dubois by Honoree Fanonne Jeffers, published by Harper on August 24. The great scholar W.E.B. Dubois once wrote about the problem of race in America and what he called double consciousness, a sensitivity that every Afro-American possesses in order to survive. Since childhood, Allie Pearl Garfield has understood Dubois' words all too well, bearing the names of 2 formidable Black Americans, the Reverend choreographer Alvin Ailey and her great-grandmother Pearl, the descendant of enslaved Georgians and tenant farmers. Allie becomes Dubois' problems. Ailey carries Dubois' problems on her shoulders. Allie is reared in the north in the city, but spends summers in the small Georgia town of Chickasetta, where her mother's family has lived since the ancestors arrived from Africa in bondage. From an early age, Allie fights a battle for belonging that's made all the more difficult by a hovering trauma, as well as the whispers of women, her mother, her sister, and a material line reaching back 2 centuries, and a maternal line reaching back 2 centuries. To come to terms with her own identity, Allie embarks on a journey through her family's past, uncovering the shocking tales of generations of ancestors, indigenous Black and white, in the Deep South. In doing so, Allie must learn to embrace her full heritage, a legacy of oppression and resistance, bondage and independence, cruelty and resilience. That is the story and the song of America itself. The Love Songs of W.E.B. Dubois by Honoree Fanonne Jeffers. The 3rd book is a book that I have mentioned before. I wanted it to be on the long list of the Booker Prize, but Booker said no. I don't know why, actually, because the people who have read it have already raved about it. I haven't read it. I haven't even touched it yet. This is The Island of the Missing Trees, the new novel by Elif Shafak, published by Viking on August 5. It is 1974 on the island of Cyprus. Two teenagers from opposite sides of a divided land meet at a tavern in the city they both call home. The tavern is the only place that Kostas, who is Greek, and Christian, and Daphne, who is Turkish and Muslim, can meet in. Secret hidden beneath the blackened beams from which hang garlands of garlic, chili, peppers, and wild herbs. This is where one can find the best food in town, the best music, the best wine. But there's something else to the place. It makes one forget, even for just a few hours, the world outside and its immoderate sorrows. In the center of the tavern, growing through a cavity in the roof, is a fig tree. This tree will witness their hushed, happy meetings, their silent, surreptitious departures, and the tree will be there when the war breaks out, when the capital is reduced to rubble, when the teenagers vanish and break apart. Decades later in North London, 16-year-old Aria Kanatsakis has never visited the island where her parents were born. Desperate for answers, she seeks to untangle years of secrets, separation, and silence. The only connection she has to the land of her ancestors is a ficus, canca, growing in the back garden of their home. In The Island of the Missing Trees, prize-winning author Elif Shafak brings us a rich, magical tale of belonging and identity, love and trauma, memory and amnesia, human-induced destruction of nature, and finally, renewal. Sounds amazing, right? Number 4 is a book by an author that was already in the talk last year on BookTube with her novel American Gothic. This is Canadian-Mexican author Velvet Was the Night by Silvia Moreno Garcia, published by Joe Fletcher Books on August 17 this year. The 1970s Mexico City, while student protests and political unrest consume the city. Maite seeks escape from her humdrum life and the stories of passion and danger fitting the latest issue of Secret Romance. She's deeply envious of her neighbor, a beautiful art student apparently living the idea of a life of excitement and intrigue Maite craves. So when Leonora disappears under suspicious circumstances, Maite finds herself searching for the missing woman, journeying deep into Leonora's secret life of student radicals and dissidents. That is another great, interesting book, I think. And the next one is the one in translation. And this is, I think it's coming from Colombia. Songs for the Flames by Juan Gabriel Vasquez. The characters in Songs for the Flames are men and women touched by violence, sometimes directly, sometimes only in passing, but whose lives are changed forever, consumed by fire and by unexpected encounters and unyielding forces. A photographer becomes obsessed with a traumatic past that an elegant woman, a fellow guest staying at a countryside ranch, would rather leave behind. A military reunion forces a soldier to confront a troubling history, both personal and on a larger scale. And in a tour de force piece, the search for a book leads the writer to the fascinating story of why a woman is buried next to a graveyard rather than in it, and the remarkable account of her journey from France to Colombia as a child orphan. Juan Gabriel Vasquez returns to stories with these 9 morally complex tales, fresh proof of his narrative versatility and his profound understanding of the lives of others. There is a romantic wistfulness that combusts with the realities of dangerous histories, both personal and political, to throw these characters into the flames from which they either emerge purified, reborn, or burned and destroyed. The 6th book takes us to Canada, Canada, Canada. That's a song that I just wrote. It's called Life in the City of Dirty Water, and it's a memoir by Clayton Thomas-Muller, published by Allen Lane on August the 24th in Canada. There have been many Clayton Thomas-Mullers, the child who played with toy planes as an escape from domestic and sexual abuse, enduring the intergenerational trauma of Canada's residential school system, the angry youngster who defended himself with fists and sharp wit against racism and violence at school and on the streets of Winnipeg and small-town British Columbia, The tough teenager who at 17 managed a drug house run by members of his own family and slipped in and out of juvie, operating in a world of violence and pain. But behind them all, there was another Clayton, the one who remained immersed in Cree spirituality and who embraced the rituals and ways of thinking vital to his heritage, the one who reconnected with the land during summer visits to his great-grandparents' trapline in his home territory of Pukatawagan in northern Manitoba. And in this version of Clayton that ultimately triumphed, finding healing by directly facing the trauma that he shares with indigenous peoples around the world. Now a leading organizer and activist on the front lines of environmental resistance, Clayton brings his warrior spirit to the fight against the ongoing assault on indigenous people's lands by big oil, tying together personal stories of survival that bring the realities of the First Nations of this land into sharp focus, and lessons learned from a career as a frontline activist committed to addressing environmental injustice at a global scale. Thomas-Muller offers a narrative and vision of healing and responsibility. What a memoir. I want to read this. I want to get this. These are the 6 books. And the seventh one that I have just decided to add to my collection. I never wanted to read about Donald Trump again. But then I saw a couple of interviews with his niece. Marielle Trump published her second book in August of 2021. I think it's a bestseller already. It's the number 1 new release at the company where we shouldn't buy books. And it is called The Reckoning, Our Nation's Trauma and Finding a Way to Heal by Marielle Trump. I read a part of the book, part of the quotes that I saw on American networks really got to me, and that's why I am interested. I'm not going to buy this, but I hope I will be able to get it from the library one of these days. For 4 years, Donald J. Trump inflicted an onslaught of overlapping and interconnected traumas upon the American people, targeting anyone he perceived as being an other or an enemy. Women were discounted and derided, the sick were dismissed as weak and unworthy of help, immigrants and minorities were demonized and discriminated against, and money was elevated above all else. In short, he transformed our country into a macro version of his malignantly dysfunctional family. How can we make sense of the degree to which our institutions and leaders have let us down? How can we negotiate a world in which all sense of safety and justice seems to have been destroyed? How can we as individuals and as a nation confront, process, and overcome this loss of trust and the ways we have been forever altered by chaos, division, and cruelty? And when the dust finally settles, how can we begin to heal in the midst of ongoing health and economic crisis and the greatest political divide since the Civil War? In The Reckoning, she applies her unique expertise to the task of helping us confront an all-encompassing trauma, one that has taken an immense toll on our nation's health and well-being. So this seems to be a book that is dealing with the situation in which the United States are now, where they have a new president, where they have President Joseph R. Biden Jr., Scranton Joe, as everybody calls him. And everything seems to be okay, but under the surface, if you read the newspapers, if you see the videos, if you see the networks, if you hear the news, you realize that there's a lot going on. Abortion is almost illegal in Texas very soon, or hasn't it already started? Where it says that from 6 weeks on, abortion is not allowed anymore. They want to take this to Washington. The Republicans want to take this to Washington. They want to reverse Roe v. Wade. In many states, they're already trying to undermine the election laws. Republican governors, Republican parliaments are doing new laws to try to prevent people of color, poor people from voting, so that they can sort of scale and form their own precincts so that they are going to win both in 2022 and definitely in 2024. so that the white man will be able to rule again in America. That's going on, and it's scary, and it's under the surface. And maybe this book by Marielle Trump gives us an insight into what's actually happening right now. Because we have this new president, and it looks okay from the outside, from the world. But if you look at the United States, if you look at the inside, how the COVID crisis is still going on, in that it's a political question, where if you wear a mask or not. If you're a Republican, you don't wear a mask. If you are a Democrat, you wear a mask. So this divides each and every one, and there's so much anger and aggression still growing somewhere, and you can almost feel it. So I hope that this book might give us a little hint of what's going on and what can heal, what can bring the people together again, if anything. These were my 7 books of August of 2021. I hope that you liked 1, 2, 3, 4, all 7 of them. Please drop a comment down below and join the Discord server. The Discord server of Rainier Books. Link down below where we can discuss each and everything. And, well, so thanks very much for watching. The next video will be a short one where I try to predict the winner of the International Women's Prize for Fiction that will be announced tomorrow in about 24 hours from now. So stay tuned and stay safe. Bye.